Hey everybody, welcome back to the Cantina Corner. I'm going to give you my final thoughts on Season 1 of Maul, Shadow Lord. Let's get to it. Alright, real quick everybody, before I get into it. Spoiler warning, I waited a couple of days to post this because I did not want to spoil anything because this was a massive week, but I am going to spoil things. There are already spoilers out there. If you have not watched these episodes yet, please stop now and go watch them first. You do not want these episodes spoiled. Alright, so that said, last chance, here we go. Vader! We get Vader versus Maul in Season 1 of this show. It actually happened. I predicted it a couple weeks ago, and then I kind of backed off because I didn't think we were really going to get it in Season 1. But I had this feeling in my mind that because they had not released the final 2 episodes to any of the people who got advanced trailers of the show, advanced teasers, advanced screeners of the show, I had a feeling that there was a really big reason, a really big reveal. I just had started to convince myself it wasn't going to be Vader, that they were going to save that for later. But no, we get that this season. Vader versus Maul on screen has happened. And man, was it awesome. I'm still inclined to think that behind the scenes, Palpatine wanted this to happen. He wanted Vader to go face Maul as sort of a test. And maybe there'll be follow-up on that in Season 2. I hope this is not the only time we see Vader versus Maul, but we did get Vader versus Maul. It was awesome, and it happened. So still kind of processing that happened, but that was really awesome. So my predictions, other than that, coming into this final week, I had predicted that Master Daki would die. He finally does die at Vader's hand. So that's pretty cool that he died as a victim of Vader. Didn't really expect that. I thought the Inquisitors would get him, or maybe Maul would do something. I think it was way better, way more appropriate, and it actually makes perfect sense that they had to bring Vader into this show at the end of the season the way they wrote it, because it sets everything up so perfectly. I'm jumping to the end, so I'm not doing things in order. I'm not giving you a recap. I'm just going to be all over the place with my thoughts here. But, Daki dying at Vader's hand, with Maul pushing him, force pushing him into the fight and abandoning him to fight on his own, is really important, a really important moment, and really appropriate. It sets up Devin to fall to the dark side because she now hates Vader and wants revenge. She doesn't know that Maul abandoned her former master, though. But we did see Brander Lawson witness that. And then they set things up to appear that he dies at the end of the episode, the end of the season. But we don't see him fall. We don't see him die. We don't even see him fall to the ground. We see him getting shot a couple of times and walking into the mist. That has to be on purpose. He is not dead. There's no way he is dead. They set up that scene on purpose, and they're going to use that in Season 2. Maybe he's going to eventually reconnect with his son, I'm sure, and with the group and Devin, and tell her, that he saw Maul abandon Daki and push Daki into that fight with Vader. But by that point, Devin will probably be too far gone. Maybe there'll be a redemption arc or something with her where she tries to come back and dies a noble death or something of that nature, similar to Vader himself at the end of Return of the Jedi, something of that along that lines. We know that Devin doesn't last into the future for too long, because we see, at least with Maul, because we see Maul in Rebels alone again. And we see him in Solo alone again, years from where we are in the current timeline. So something has to happen that separates the two of them. Whether that or not that means she dies, or she maybe splits from him and goes into seclusion, something like that. We'll have to wait and see. I really, really hope that we aren't going to just get 2 seasons of this show at this point, though. There is so much ground they can cover now. I think that this needs to be at least a 3-season show. I hope that's what we get. We'll wait and see. I'm optimistic that we probably will get more than 2 seasons, because it is animation. They seem to have more freedom and a little bit more, they're a little more immune to shows being canceled, as long as, and this one's been a hugely popular show, so all of those things bode well for more than 2 seasons. So we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully that's what happens. But even more than that, it did end on a giant cliffhanger, which is the one thing I said was for sure going to happen coming out of last week. I hope more than anything that we don't have to wait super long to get season 2. I hope that it comes next year. I don't think there's any chance it comes any sooner than that, but I hope that we at least get it around the same time next year. But I'm not going to predict or count on that. From everything that I've seen and read online, they've started work on it, but it seems like it's early days. It is animation. They can produce it faster for sure. So hopefully a year out we'll get the next part of this story, but it might be 18 months is kind of where I'm setting my expectations, and then hopefully I'm wrong and we'll get it sooner. But I just don't want to count on it coming too soon until we know. But we'll have to wait and see. So, but Vader versus Maul, awesome. Docky died, back to predictions. So he did finally die. I've been saying it the whole season. I thought he was going to die week 1. So give the dude credit. He lasted a lot longer. He grew on me, even though he was kind of an unlikable Jedi because he had so many kind of flaws, and he kept kind of just doing things that made you not like him. The way he kept abandoning Devin, the way he kept walking away from confrontations and helping people. And, you know, he was an old school dogmatic prequel era Jedi for sure, through and through. And there were some qualities in his actions that were not likable, but the character himself was very likable. He held his own against Vader. He landed a blow on Vader's shoulder, so that was cool to see. And I like the character design. So Master Docky, glad we got more of him than I thought we were going to. I enjoyed the character. R.I.P. He's now officially gone. Devin is masterless until she jumps to the dark side. So the end of the episode, that's where we get left off, right? Again, I'm jumping all over the place. I'm going to go back and hit some other things, but the very last thing we see is Devin saying to Maul, okay, I'm ready. Teach me the ways of the dark side. And we get these close-up shots of their eyes, and that's how the show ends. Her eyes and then his eyes. She's committed now to going over to the dark side. Docky's gone. There's not going to be that voice of reason to pull her back from the edge anymore. Maul is going to be able to bend her to his will, and we're going to see a dark apprentice trained by Darth Maul, who is no longer Darth. So really cool territory we're getting into here, right? We're getting dark side force users who are not the official Sith in the galaxy. Maul also did not know about Vader. He says in the episode, "Who are you? What are you?" He doesn't know who Vader is, but Vader knows who he is. Vader was Anakin. Darth Maul tried to run him over on his speeder, and then he also saw him on Naboo when he was fighting with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. So Anakin, Darth Vader, knows who Maul is. Plus, Palpatine's probably told him about his original apprentice a little bit. So Vader knows, but Maul doesn't know who Darth Vader is. He has presumably figured out that he is Palpatine's new apprentice, but we don't even know that for certain. But I think it's a pretty safe assumption that he was able to glean that. He knows he's more than an Inquisitor. What else could he be? He's obviously working under the Empire, too, since he's there with the Inquisitors. So, connect the dots. Maul has to have figured out that he's Sidious's apprentice, but he doesn't know that he's Anakin at this point. We'll have to wait and see if and when he ever finds that out. That'll be interesting, too. So, again, I hope we're not done. I hope we get rematch number 2, maybe even number 3 before we're done with Maul versus Vader, and this was just kind of the appetizer. Also, by the time Maul and Vader fight, Maul was already pretty beaten up and injured from everything he's been through this season. So we didn't get to see a full-strength Maul versus a full-strength Vader. Vader was at his full strength. Maul was not. So I'd like to see a more fair fight where Maul is prepared and at it closer to his full strength, maybe with Devin at his side. Really hope we get that. That would be awesome. I think that would be appropriate. Maul loses everybody in these final 2 episodes. He has no forces left from his original crew where we started this season. Rook Cast is presumably dead. She's killed off screen by Darth Vader. I'm not ready to say Rook Cast is dead. I think all the evidence right now supports that she is dead, but the fact that we don't see it happen on screen leaves it open enough that I feel like there could be something there still. She was envious of Devin. She didn't want Devin to be Maul's apprentice. You could tell. One of my predictions was that the 2 of them were going to have a confrontation. That did not happen this season. May not ever happen if Rook Cast is actually dead. But how cool would it be if she's not dead and she goes on some kind of a revenge mission against Devin in season 2? I predicted that 2 Boots was going to die. I was wrong. Two Boots does not die. Instead, my favorite character in this show, my favorite droid that they've done in it forever, for a long time, and I love lots of the droids, Spybot died. They killed Spybot, and there's no doubt about it. He gets cut in half. He says, "Master," to Maul, and then he falls into a pool of acid. He is dead. And I'm heartbroken. He was so fun. But I'm actually not surprised or shocked. I didn't predict it because in my heart I didn't want Spybot to die. But it's actually really appropriate that Maul loses everybody that he had at the beginning of this show. Now he gains some things too towards the end of this. He's got an in with Dryden Voss again, which gives him access to Crimson Dawn. So he can rebuild now. And Dryden thinks he's using Maul to gain power and become the top of the pyramid at Crimson Dawn. But we know by the end of Solo that Voss is working under Maul. Not even the end of Solo. During Solo, we hear him allude to, you know who I'm working for. So we know that somehow that power dynamic is going to flip. And Dryden doesn't think he's going to come out of this working for Maul. He thinks he's going to be at the same level or higher than Maul, which is naive to the extreme. So obviously Maul's going to gain that power. He's going to rebuild. I kind of hope that happens off screen a little bit and we get a time jump, just a small one, before the next season. We've already seen Maul kind of build up some forces this season. I don't really want to repeat that whole arc of him having to rebuild again. I'd rather him start with some power, but I do want to see it happen a little bit. So I don't want them to take a massive time jump, but I would like to see, maybe the boss, Rintaro, I think was the name that Dryden said he wants Maul to kill. Maybe that can happen off screen. I don't necessarily need to see that piece happen. So maybe just a small time jump. Definitely don't want a big one though, because I want to see Maul training Devon in detail. I really hope that they give us that and we don't just jump straight to her being already fully trained as his apprentice. She has tons of skills already as a Padawan. She's very skilled with a lightsaber, which is probably part of why he was attracted to her. So it won't take a lot for him to bring her up to speed in terms of combat training. He's got to train her how to tap into her rage and give in to the temptation of the dark side so she can unleash that power. So the training doesn't necessarily need to take an entire season, but I'd like to see at least a couple of episodes where we dig into that before they get to a point where she's fully kind of bought in and trained and using the dark side intentionally. But yeah, Two Boots doesn't die. My original prediction was actually that he was going to be reprogrammed and sent after the Lawsons. That didn't happen either. So now it seems like he's going to be Riley's custodian, right? He's going to take care of Riley. He's the one last thing currently in place to kind of shield and protect Riley from this dangerous world he's being carried into. So we'll just have to wait and see how that goes. I don't see how Two Boots and Riley can stay with Maul and Dryden and Devon for very long. They're probably going to have to try to run away. So maybe Two Boots will still die eventually. Maybe he'll be trying to help Riley escape and he'll die at some point during that. But I thought that was going to happen, this season, the way things were going. So wasn't right about that prediction. He was a really likable character as well, though. So I'm kind of glad that we got at least Two Boots through the first season. We'll get a little more of him. He was likable, but also annoying to the extreme because he was so bound by the protocol and kept getting everybody in trouble. So maybe seeing him have a chance to fully redeem himself for those kind of mistakes would be nice. And if Lawson's really not dead, which I fully expect, seeing the two of them reunited could be cool. So we'll have to see where that goes. They're definitely the B story here anyways. The Lawsons, that's just something to move the plot forward. I wouldn't be disappointed at all if they were a minor part of season 2 and they kind of were written out of the story and we focused more on Devon and Maul by maybe the middle of season 2. That wouldn't bother me one bit. But we'll just have to wait and see where that goes. Who knows? I like the characters just fine, but I also would be just fine with them getting some resolution to their stories and us moving on. Final thoughts, just on this week. 10 out of 10 this week for sure. But I mean, this show overall, I think this is a 10 out of 10 show. This was fantastic. The art style is so gorgeous. Every week it delivered. I just love the matte painting backgrounds that they used. So that was just gorgeous. This gritty, chewed look that they talked about being kind of an intentional decision to make it look a little grimier and dirtier works so perfectly. I'm a huge fan of Rebels in terms of Star Wars animation. This doesn't rise to that level for me yet in terms of story, but only because we haven't gotten as much of it yet. If we get 3 seasons of this show, it'll definitely have a chance to be right there for me. I just need more time with these characters and this story for it to reach that level. But as a season by itself, it's top rate for me, so I'm giving it a 10. I really don't know how they could have done any better. I do like that it is a streaming series instead of a series that was meant to air on TV, and so they produced it as such, and we only got 10 episodes. There was no bloat or filler. That's one thing you can criticize about some other shows in Star Wars animation, and you know, Clone Wars, Rebels definitely had that. Bad Batch had filler episodes, and Bad Batch, interestingly, had those filler episodes unnecessarily, to my mind. I'm not trying to badmouth Bad Batch. I loved the show overall. I thought that one was great too. But that was more like a 7.5, 8 for me, where this is a 10. And part of the reason this is a 10 for me is because it's 10 episodes over 5 weeks with 0 filler. I don't feel like a single moment of the show was wasted or used just to pass time. I feel like they delivered something every single week, every single episode, and every single minute within these episodes. The pacing was so good. It was gorgeous. So much action. Other closing thoughts. Really surprised we don't see Marok die on screen. He gets pushed off into an abyss, so maybe he's also dead? Again, we know he comes back in Ahsoka. I don't think he is. I think they intentionally left a lot of these things vague so they have options to bring characters back into it. But I was surprised that they didn't kill him outright on screen. I thought that this was the perfect time to do it, and it would set up his eventual resurrection in Ahsoka, and then maybe they could give us how that happened at some point. Still think that very likely could happen. Probably will happen somewhere. I don't know if it'll be in this show. Maybe it'll be in a comic book. But I think we'll get a little more resolution to that storyline at some point in the future. But we don't have it yet. The other Inquisitor, who's the Crow, we know that he didn't. We knew he wasn't going to die because we see him die at Ahsoka's hand in Tales of the Jedi. I think that was what that little miniseries is called. So we knew he survived, but that to me was a bit. I guess I had a criticism. That would be the one thing that I would criticize here. They took Marok out of the fight, and then they had Devin fighting against the Crow for a little bit. If they had reversed that and taken the Crow out of the fight and had her fighting Marok, the tension would have been higher because you wouldn't have known for sure if Marok was about to die. But you knew for sure the Crow was not about to die, at least as sure as you ever can know. Could they have killed him and brought him back? Sure. But that would have been a stretch to do it with a second Inquisitor, and to have Devin kill him and then Ahsoka kill him. That would have been a lot. Plus, the version of him that we see Ahsoka take out seems very much to be this same incarnation of the Crow. So I don't think that would have worked anyways. So I think had they flipped that and taken the Crow out of the episode when Marok went out and had Marok be the one that was still fighting, that might have been a little more interesting, a little bit more at stake during those final moments. That's a super nitpicky criticism. I think that they were justified in going the way they did for sure, so I'm not taking anything off of my score for that. I think the Crow's design is a little bit more interesting, so visually I think it was a little cooler seeing him on screen longer. We also got Marok before we got the Crow in this show. He came in a week later, the Crow did, so getting to see more of him now and less of Marok balances the screen time for those two characters a little bit better, so that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, could they have gone the other way? Sure. Might it have raised the stakes and the tension a tiny bit? Maybe. Doesn't matter, doesn't bother me, doesn't in any way diminish my enjoyment of the show. At the end of the day, all of those were icing on the cake. I ended up liking Devin a whole lot more than I thought maybe I was going to from the start to the finish. I came into the show maybe with a little bit of just a bias against her character, not knowing anything about her, just thinking, here we go again. Here's a Padawan, But she's a very advanced, very capable Padawan. I loved the performances from the voice actress. I thought she did a fantastic job, and she's really skilled on screen. So I actually Devin really grew on me. So now I'm bought in, and I'm excited to see her story continue in this conversion over to the dark side. But what we came to this show for was Maul, and he was all over the show, start to finish. And we get at the end of it Maul versus Vader. How awesome to see that. That was so great. Another note that occurred to me, Maul gets beat up a few times during the season. You see him get his leg damaged, and later in Rebels he's limping. So that's an appropriate foreshadowing that they've connected back to now, that he has damage in his legs from what we've seen on screen here. So presumably he'll never be back to his full self again, and that's going to be a lingering injury that he's going to have from now on, even though they're mechanical legs, right? It's a little bit weird. But the weirdest thing to me is that he gets hit in that same spot on his leg, and kind of up on his hip, like 4 or 5 times by the Inquisitors and by Vader. How he was not dismembered again, how he didn't lose another leg, even if it was a mechanical one, is kind of crazy. And it was a little bit, again, minor nitpick, but it was a little bit unbelievable to me that he would get hit in the same spot over and over again. And we see an interesting moment during these episodes where he chooses to disassemble his saber staff and fight with 2 sabers in each hand. So we've seen him fight two-handed before, but we've never seen him, that I can remember, separate his blade and choose to fight two-handed. And I wonder if that had something to do with that injury, and if it was a better way to defend himself from further injury. We also had never seen him have a staff that he could disassemble like that on command. His original staff in The Phantom Menace was not designed to separate like that, as far as we know. It was cut in half by Obi-Wan at the end of the episode. So that is a subtle change and distinction, but it's a good one, and it's a cool change. And they use that to great effect, because during the climax of these episodes, he separates his staff and he gives one of his blades to Devin when she's disarmed, which gives her a red blade that she's still holding in her possession at the end of the episodes. He may have given that to her permanently. That may be her saber now, and it's the original half of what was left of his original saber staff from the Phantom Menace. So there's some symbolism there if he does let her keep that and she doesn't build her own blade. I'll feel a little bit cheated if that's what happens. I feel like Jedi and Sith should build their own blades, build their own sabers, and I'd like to see that happen. I'd like to, we don't get enough lightsaber building scenes in any of these shows, to my mind. We finally got one in Ahsoka. We get a few things in Clone Wars, but we rarely get to see Jedi or Sith building their lightsabers. So I would like to see that, but I'm not sure we're going to. I think that maybe he has gifted her that saber, and by the time we see him in Solo, it appears that the staff he's wielding at that point is no longer has that portion of his original saber present. So there is an opening where he has given that to Devin, and that becomes her saber, and then its fate is bound to her, which would be his last connection to Sidious, his time as Sidious's apprentice, in terms of a physical reminder. So maybe it's appropriate that he's moving on from that if he has gifted that to her. So we'll have to wait and see. If so, does she build it into a saber staff to follow in his ways, or does she just fight with a single blade, or does she go 2-bladed? Does he rebuild his saber staff right away? Probably he does. He seems to be very committed to that combat technique. We know at the end of Solo he has a saber staff again, so probably. I think we see, and again, and also in Rebels, we see him with a saber staff again. That staff, by that point in time, has an Inquisitor blade in use to form the other half of the blade. Presumably, he has to kill an Inquisitor at some point and take that blade to use it to remake his staff. So where I was going with that is, I'm not sure he'll have a saber staff right at the beginning of season 2. If Devin's holding his half of his blade and he's got the other half, they may fight single-bladed for a while, and it may come down to a confrontation where he does ultimately kill an Inquisitor of some sort before he gets back to a saber staff. Which brings me back to Marok. I don't think he's dead yet, so there could be a rematch coming there, and that could be Marok's blade that Maul eventually adapts to rebuild his saber. We'll just have to wait and see. Those are my thoughts, updates on my predictions, kind of final recap on the season. 10 out of 10 show. Absolutely loved it. If you haven't watched it yet, you get to binge it from the start. That's awesome. I'll look forward to rewatching it sometime soon, kind of in one big chunk whenever I have some time to do that. But really love the show. Hope you all did too. Thanks for watching these videos. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. Until the next time, may the Force be with you.